Disciplinary power in advertising. In the second half of the 20th century, philosophers began to reconsider theories of power after experiences of communism in China and Russia, the decline of factories in capitalist society, and the failure of many mass revolutionary movements across the globe. Socialist theorist Michel Foucault was one of those philosophers that rejected repressive power and instead proposed the rise of normalizing power, something that had been coming about as far back as the Enlightenment. Normalizing power only grew stronger as markets free from governmental input increasingly brought about what Michel Foucault named disciplinary power. This is the kind of power that we exercise over ourselves based on our knowledge of how we fit into society. For example, street signs that warn you of upcoming speed cameras do nothing to actually stop and punish crime, but the idea that we are constantly being surveilled encourages us to slow the car down. Seeing this enough normalizes the idea of being surveilled and thus maintains our role as a good citizen. This module of disciplinary power is used to great effect in the world of advertising, as companies seek to create good consumers rather than good citizens. If the semiotics of a product can represent the ideal version of a consumer in the public gaze, then it can appear essential for them to buy into the messages of the product, as the role of consumer has become increasingly normalized in the modern world. Disciplinary power was by no means new to the world of PR and advertising by the time Foucault wrote Discipline and Punish in 1975. It's perhaps most prominently seen as far back as Edward Bernay's Torches of Freedom, way back in 1929. By equating cigarettes with female emancipation, the members of first-wave feminism wanted to be seen smoking to show their allegiance with the suffragettes. It is this visibility that assures the hold of disciplinary power. This is not to say that Foucault's writing on the modality of disciplinary power has had no effect on advertising. To show what has changed, I want to look at an advertisement aimed at women in the 1960s and one from 2009, both of which reflect the changing nature of disciplinary power, moving from an act of repression to an act of normalization. The first advertisement is from a brand that has a history of missing the mark. It's Instant Folgers Coffee.
Harvey, want anything special for your birthday?
Just a decent cup of coffee.
You're kidding.
I'm serious. Honey, your coffee's undrinkable.
It's pretty harsh.
Well, so's your coffee. You know, the girls down at the office make better coffee on their hot plates. Well, see you later.
And he didn't even kiss me goodbye. You know, if I could just make a decent cup of coffee, I could relax. So, relax. Why don't you try Instant Folgers? Tastes good as fresh perked. Good as fresh perked? I'll surprise Harvey for his birthday tonight.
Hey, great coffee.
It's Instant Folgers. Doesn't it taste good as fresh perked?
Better.
Better than those girls make at the office?
Honey, their coffee can't hold a candle to yours.
Instant Folgers taste good as fresh perked. Try it.
The sexist and oppressive tones of the advertisement very clearly enact power over the audience by suggesting that the man of the house is watching your every move. Surveillance is a defining feature of the disciplinary power module proposed by Foucault. Foucault writes that examination combines the techniques of an observing hierarchy and those of a normalizing judgment. It is a normalizing gaze, a surveillance that makes it possible to qualify, to classify, and to punish. The wife is being judged not only by her very critical husband, but by her friends, as they normalize traditional domestic roles of women at the beginning of the 1960s. Through the judgmental gaze of society around her, the key to a good life and a happy marriage appears to rest heavily on good coffee. But whilst the advertisement does have elements of disciplinary power, it's still not entirely separated from sovereign power. Foucault noted that sovereign power is exercised through punishment and reward. The husband not only watches and passes judgment, but actively scolds his wife. The reward of his love and affection is withheld from her until she buys into Folgers coffee. A form of power marked as significant by French and Raven. However, it may be lacking in the contextual climate the ad was released in. In the 1960s, second wave feminism was strong in the cultural zeitgeist, led by philosophers such as Betty Friedan. The movement fought against the traditional domestic roles of women and the subtle, uncomfortable discrimination that exists as women increasingly entered the workforce. This social climate is evidenced in legislation changes throughout the 1960s, as it is in this social climate that the Instant Folgers coffee advertisement failed. Rather than fully adopting the disciplinary power that suited the context, Folgers stuck to old ideas of sovereign power and threatened surveillance from a patriarchy that was slowly being rejected. Thus, the ad was almost immediately branded as sexist, and Folgers coffee was semiotically related to outdated ideas. This stands in stark contrast with Ogilvy's 2009 advertisement for Nike Women. The print shows ordinary everyday objects which represent the marginal differences between world records. For instance, this bus stop reflecting the difference in space between the men's 100 meters and the women's. The disciplinary power here lies in the transformation of the ordinary object into surveillance. Through the ad, the everyday world appears to pressure the audiences to strive for greater performance, greater results, and greater equality, a goal which can seemingly be achieved through buying Nike's products. Foucault wrote, "The disciplinary power is exercised through its invisibility. At the same time, it imposes on those whom it subjects the principle of compulsory visibility." These words have clearly had an impact on the ad in almost every sense. The power is not overt or punishing, like the Folgers ad, but rather hidden in the emotions that Ogilvy attaches to the objects. A bus stop may be littered with advertisements, but by attaching the meanings of a product to the actual structure itself, suddenly the everyday world becomes the pervasive surveyor, a normalizing gaze that incites the purchase of Nike shoes. This development follows the thought of Baudrillard's model of simulacrum. By moving further away from representation of shoes and their performance towards a hyperreal exchange of signs and ideas, the advertisement can link Nike's products with the reward of equality, exercising power on audiences based on their knowledge of themselves in society, as people who try and close gendered gaps which are made literal and prevalent through these objects. This move also makes sense contextually. Not only had the fight for equality for women continued to grow into the 21st century, but the importance placed on self-discipline had continued to grow, and the Nike brand grew with it. The earliest Just Do It ads targeted Americans who feared that the United States was becoming soft, combating the considerable decline in the tenacious push towards self-improvement, which was at the core of the American ideology. This ad operates in much the same way, that it is not only surveillance from society that enables disciplinary power, but surveillance from yourself to become better. And this ad operates in much the same way that it is not only surveillance from society that enables disciplinary power, but surveillance from yourself to become better that can encourage you to buy products, whether that be dietary goods, mental health applications or therapy, or in this case, activewear. This is where the use of disciplinary power in the Nike ad succeeds, but Instant Folgers fails. The Folgers ad threatened power from outside sources that at the time were increasingly being rejected by the very women that the ad was targeted towards. You are buying this product for your husband, to impress your friends, and to make better coffee than the girls at work. But you are always buying the product for someone else. This ignores the key component of disciplinary power, which is that we ultimately govern ourselves. As Fendler argues, in the disciplinary mode of power, knowledge and psychology and social science helps us to understand who we are. The alternative to this is in the Nike ad, which is a product we buy into because we are under surveillance of ourselves. Like the suffragettes with their torches of freedom, the wearing of Nike shoes can start to inform identity, the idealized version of what the consumer wants to see in themselves. Someone who is taking action to improve their own life, taking action to get fit, and taking action to reduce the gap in larger social issues that exist contextually. From this, we can gather that disciplinary power cannot exert power without an understanding of what it is the audience wants and what they consider to have legitimate power. Unlike the street signs that normalize constant surveillance, ongoing ad campaigns make it normal for consumers to buy into the messages of products, to semiotically link objects with products and products with values, and that is an incredibly powerful form of disciplinary action.